The city lights were still glowing outside, but inside Faizan's small apartment, everything had gone dark. His fan had stopped turning. His phone showed 3% battery. The electricity bill was unpaid for 2 weeks now. Faizan sat in the corner of the room, knees to his chest, holding an old photograph of his parents. The room was silent, except for the sound of his own heartbeat. It was the only thing that told him he was still alive. Just 2 months ago, life felt normal. Faizan had a steady job at a software company. He was planning to get engaged. He was saving up for his own car. His mother was proud of him, but then everything changed. First, the company downsized. Faizan and 10 others were fired in a single email. Then, only 1 week later, his father had a heart attack and passed away in the hospital before Faizan could even say goodbye. His world collapsed silently. No warnings, no explanations, only pain. Now, the fridge was empty. His bank account had round 486. His mother was in her room, coughing. He had no answers left. He tried to be strong in front of her, but at night, when she slept, he broke down. Tonight was one of those nights. Faizan stared at the photo in his hands. His father's soft smile, his mother's bright eyes. They looked so full of life. He whispered, voice shaking, "Abba, what do I do now?" There was no reply, only the ticking of a broken wall clock. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence. Knock. Knock, someone at the door? He stood up slowly, walked across the dark room, and opened it. There was no one, just a small white envelope on the floor. Faizan looked around the hallway. Empty. He picked it up. No name, no stamp. Inside was a small paper. It read, "Keep moving." "I am here." Faizan's hands froze. He looked around again. Still no one. Who left this? Was it a prank? Or something more? He sat back down, staring at the message. The words were simple, but something about them felt heavy, powerful, personal. That night, he couldn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because something inside him had started to wake up. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was madness. Or maybe it was God. The next morning, Faizan woke up early. His mother was still, coughing. He made tea with the last tea bag. He handed it to her, smiling. She smiled back. Tired, but grateful. "Don't worry, Ma," he said softly. "Things will get better." She nodded but didn't reply. Faizan put on his old shoes, walked outside. No job to go to. No plan. But he walked anyway. Every street felt different today, like something invisible was watching, guiding. He passed by a small tea stall. The man there waved at him. "Bye, you okay?" "You look tired," he said. Faizan smiled weakly. No job, but still breathing. The tea man gave him a cutting chai without asking for money. "On the house," he said. "You helped me with my phone settings last year." "I didn't forget." Faizan sat on the bench outside. The tea was warm, sweet. It felt like life was giving him tiny pieces of comfort, one sip at a time. As he sipped, he noticed a group of kids across the street. They were sitting outside a broken building, drawing on pieces of cardboard. One little girl caught his eye. She was wearing mismatched slippers and had dust on her face, but her smile was wide, pure. She held up her drawing, a big blue heart. Then she looked straight at Faizan, smiled, and shouted, "This heart is for someone who feels sad." Faizan froze. His eyes watered instantly. He hadn't cried in front of anyone since his father died. But now, sitting there in public, he couldn't stop the tears. He walked over slowly. "Can I sit here?" he asked. The kids welcomed him like he was one of them. The little girl handed him the blue heart. You look like someone who needs it, she said. Faizan looked at the heart. It was crooked, messy, colored with broken crayons, but it was the most beautiful thing he'd seen in weeks. He smiled, genuinely, for the first time in days. Later, one of the boys said, "We come here every day. This place used to be a shelter, but now it's closed. No one helps us anymore." Faizan looked at the old building, cracks on the wall, rusted gate, but still full of life, because of these children. He asked, "Who takes care of you?" They replied, "No one. We just take care of each other now." That night, Faizan walked home slowly. He had no money, no job, but somehow he didn't feel as empty. He reached home and found his mother asleep. On the table, the same envelope from last night lay open. He picked it up again. Read it once more. "Keep moving. I am here." And for the first time, he whispered back, "Okay, I will." Would you follow a path if you had no idea where it was leading you? Faizan didn't want to, but he felt something deep inside. He had to. The sun rose gently over the city, but Faizan's mind was still cloudy. He sat on the bed beside his sleeping mother, holding the same white envelope from last night. 5 words. Just 5. Keep moving. I am here. They were not just words anymore. They were a push, a whisper, maybe even a command. Faizan looked at his worn-out shoes. His hands trembled slightly. He didn't know where to go, but something inside him said, "Just walk." After giving his mother tea, he packed a small bag, 1 notebook, 1 pen, a few coins. He stepped out of the house and started walking with no map, no job, no idea, just the memory of the kids at the broken shelter. The place felt familiar, strangely important. When he reached the shelter again, it was quiet. The children weren't there yet. But the rusted gate was open this time. He pushed it slowly. It creaked like an old memory. Dust filled the air, broken chairs, old posters, spider webs on the corners. Then he saw it, a photo frame on the back wall. Faizan stepped closer. His heartbeat grew louder. It was his father, younger, healthier, smiling, standing with a group of people, inside this very building. Faizan's breath caught in his throat. "What is this place?" he whispered. He touched the photo gently. His father was holding a small sign that read, "Light for Lost Souls." Tears filled Faizan's eyes. He never knew this part of his father's life. Behind the photo, something was hidden. A small paper folded neatly. Faizan opened it. Another handwritten message. "If you're reading this, you were meant to continue what I started." Abba Faizan sat down on the dusty floor, overwhelmed. His father had worked here, helped children, built something good. And now, somehow, it was being passed to him. He whispered, "I don't know how to do this, Abba. I don't even know if—" "I can," but the words from the letter echoed again. "Keep moving. I am here." Later that day, the kids came back. They laughed when they saw Faizan. "Uncle, you came back," the little girl with the blue heart drawing said. He smiled, still emotional. "Yes, and I'm not going anywhere." They all sat together again. This time, Faizan brought notebooks. He began teaching them letters, words, stories. The laughter in that broken place was louder than ever. Day after day, Faizan kept returning. He didn't have money, but he had time. He didn't have power, but he had presence. He helped repair windows, clean rooms, teach the kids, and every evening he would talk to his father's photo like it was alive. One day, the tea shop man visited the shelter. He watched Faizan from the gate. "You're really doing something here," he said. Faizan nodded. "I don't know what I'm doing, but it feels right." The man looked around. "This place, Your father once helped my brother. Paid for his medicine. I never forgot. He handed Faizan a small envelope. Not much. Just something to keep this place going for a week. Faizan opened it. Rs 2000. It felt like Rs 2 lack in that moment. He sat down with the children, feeling a little stronger now. A little more. Sure. Still lost, but walking. One of the boys said, "Uncle, why do you help us if you don't have anything?" Faizan smiled and said softly, "Because once, someone helped me when I had nothing." As days passed, people started noticing. A local grocery store began giving leftover food. A retired teacher offered to teach the kids twice a week. A small group of parents started sending their children too. The broken shelter slowly came back to life. Not because Faizan had a plan, but because he chose to move, even without one. One night, after closing up, Faizan found an old diary in a locked drawer. It had his father's name on it. The pages were full of small writings, quotes, prayers. On the last page, something was underlined. When the road looks dark, take one step. God doesn't always give a map. Sometimes he gives only a moment. Faizan closed the diary and whispered, "Okay, God, I'm still walking." He looked at his reflection, but the man staring back didn't look like Faizan anymore. Tired eyes, weak body. Yet, something in his heart was growing stronger every day. Faizan stood in front of the mirror inside the shelter's broken washroom. His shirt had holes. His hands were rough from cleaning floors and fixing broken windows. His eyes were red from sleepless nights. This was not the man he used to be. But maybe this was the man he was meant to become. It had been 4 weeks since Faizan found the photo of his father in the shelter. 4 weeks of teaching kids, cleaning, building, and praying. The broken building was slowly turning into a small home again. But then everything stopped. A man in a black suit came that morning, with papers in his hand and a serious face. "This place is going to be demolished," he said. "The land belongs to the city now. You need to leave within 10 days. Faizan's heart dropped. The children stood behind him, confused and scared. He asked, "Why now? Why this place?" The man replied coldly, "It's not registered. No legal owner. We're clearing the land." Faizan sat on the floor after the man left. His hands shook. All the hard work, all the prayers, all the little progress. Could it all disappear just like that? He looked at the corner where the kids kept their drawings. He saw the blue heart again, the one the little girl had given him. This heart is for someone who feels sad. He smiled through tears. He remembered his father's note. "If you're reading this, you were meant to continue what I started." But how? He didn't even know who built the shelter first. There were no documents, no records, only faith. That night, Faizan didn't go home. He sat in the shelter, staring at the wall. No electricity, just a small candle, and silence. He opened his father's old diary again, read the last lines one more time. "When the road looks dark, take one step. God doesn't always give a map. Sometimes he gives only a moment." He closed his eyes and whispered, "Show me the next step, God." The next day, something unexpected happened. The little girl with the blue heart drawing, Zoya, came running to him. "Uncle, I found something in my grandma's house. It has your papa's name on it." Faizan followed her to a small room behind the tea stall. There, in a dusty old box, was a file. Inside it were papers, letters, even photos, all related to the old shelter. One document stood out. Trustee, Mr. Rafiq Khan, Faizan's father. Faizan's hands trembled. This was the proof he needed. This was his father's legacy. He could fight now, not with anger, but with truth. He took the file to a lawyer nearby. The man looked at the papers and nodded slowly. "This may help, but you'll need more support." Faizan asked, "What kind of support?" The lawyer said, "People, community, voices." So Faizan did something bold. He made flyers and passed them around the neighborhood. "This shelter saved many children. Now it needs you. Help us protect it." At first, only a few showed interest. But then something beautiful happened. The same tea shop owner, the retired teacher, some local parents. They all came. They brought friends. They told stories of how the shelter once helped them or their families. People who were once strangers stood beside Faizan like family. In the middle of all this noise and effort, Faizan caught a glimpse of himself in the shelter's mirror again, and for the first time. He smiled at his reflection. He no longer looked like the man who had lost everything. He looked like a man who was building something new, maybe even a man of purpose. A few days later, the man in the black suit came again. This time, Faizan was ready. He stood with the documents in one hand and over 20 people standing behind him. Faizan spoke clearly, without fear. "This place has history. It has purpose. And now it has proof. You can't destroy it." The man looked at the papers, looked at the people, then said, "We'll review this. You'll hear from us soon." And he walked away. The shelter was quiet for a moment. Then the children started clapping. Not because they understood everything, but because they saw their uncle standing strong. That night, Faizan stood in front of the mirror again, same tired eyes, same old clothes. But this time, he saw something else. Faith. He whispered to himself, "Maybe I'm not lost. Maybe I'm just being led." Sometimes, the loudest voice doesn't speak at all. It waits, in silence, until you're finally ready to hear it. Faizan had ignored it for years, but today, it spoke. The morning sun peeked through the shelter's dusty windows. Faizan was sweeping the front steps when a boy from the neighborhood ran up to him, breathless. "Uncle, this came for you." He handed him a plain envelope. No name, no stamp, no address. Faizan opened it slowly. Inside was a photo, his father smiling, standing next to a man Faizan didn't recognize. The back of the photo had one line written in fading ink. "He knew more than I ever did. Find him. No name. No clue." Only a second note in the envelope. "You've passed the first test. Are you ready to finish what he started?" Faizan's hands trembled. His heart raced. Who was this man? And how was he connected to Abba? That evening, Faizan showed the photo to the tea shop owner. The old man squinted. "Wait, I've seen this man before. He used to visit your father at night. A quiet man. People called him Baba Rehmat. But he disappeared after your father died." "Do you know where he lived?" Faizan asked, desperate. The tea seller pointed toward the edge of the city. "Old railway colony. Broken house. People say he still lives there. Like a shadow." Faizan didn't waste a moment. The next day, he took a small bus and reached the railway colony. The roads were rough. The houses looked forgotten. He asked a few people about Baba Rehmat. Most shook their heads. One old woman finally whispered, "He doesn't talk to anyone, but he watches, always watching." She pointed to a broken blue house. Faizan walked up to the gate. Rusty, half open, like it hadn't been touched in years. He stepped in slowly. A thin old man sat on the floor inside, eyes closed, whispering to himself. Long white beard. Empty. Bowl beside him. Peaceful, but distant. Faizan stood silently, unsure what to say. Then, without opening his eyes, the old man said, "It took you long enough to come." Faizan froze. How did you know I'd come? The old man opened his eyes slowly. They always come when they're ready. Your father, he came the same way. Faizan sat down on the floor across from him. I don't understand what's happening, he said softly. Why me? Why now? Baba Rehmat smiled gently. Because your father's work was never finished, and your name was written on the last page. He handed Faizan a worn-out book. It was Faizan's father's handwriting, but the last page was blank, except for one line. Faizan will know when it's time. Tears filled Faizan's eyes. He looked up. I'm not him. I don't know how to lead, how to save this place. I'm just trying. Baba Rehmat leaned in and whispered, That's why you were chosen. The ones who don't want power are the ones who use it with love. He closed the book and placed it in Faizan's hands. Go back. Keep walking. You will find more than you're looking for. Faizan left the blue house with a strange mix of peace and confusion. He didn't have answers, but he had something stronger now, faith. When he returned to the shelter, the children ran to him. Uncle, a big man came while you were gone. He said he wants to help us. Faizan's eyes widened. Who? They pointed to a man sitting near the gate. Well-dressed, calm, a warm smile. Faizan walked up. The man stood and stretched out his hand. I knew your father. He once helped me when I had nothing. I've been looking for a way to repay him. I want to help you rebuild this place. Properly. Faizan looked around. The kids, the walls, the old books. He was no longer alone. But just as hope returned, another envelope arrived. This time, it was addressed to Faizan. Inside, just one sentence. Someone is trying to stop you. Be careful who you trust. Sometimes the people who smile the most are the ones who carry the deepest knives. Faizan was about to learn that not every helping hand is clean. The man at the gate had kind eyes, a warm handshake, a confident voice. I knew your father, he said. He once helped me when no one else would. Now I want to return the favor. Faizan wanted to believe him. The man had already donated money, offered to bring clean water, even talked about painting the shelter. But Faizan couldn't forget the letter. Someone is trying to stop you. Be careful who you trust. That warning stayed in his chest like a quiet alarm. The man's name was Mr. Naeem. He dressed well, spoke gently, and offered solutions to problems Faizan had struggled with for weeks. Within days, he brought in new fans for the hot classrooms, fresh books for the kids' volunteers to help with repairs. Everyone was impressed, except Faizan. He smiled. He said thank you. But inside, he watched, carefully. One evening, Faizan entered the back storeroom. Mr. Naeem was on a phone call. He didn't see Faizan. His voice was low, serious. Yes, I've already gained his trust. Give it another week. Once he signs the papers, the land is ours. Faizan's heart stopped. He stepped back quietly. So it was true. This man was not here to help. He was here to take. Faizan felt sick. He went outside, sat on the stairs, and stared at the sky. The same shelter his father built. The same place the kids now called home. Someone wanted to steal it in the name of help. And Faizan almost let him. That night he wrote in his notebook, "Not every light is sunlight. Some lights burn too fast and leave only smoke." The next day, Mr. Naeem came again, with legal papers. "I've drawn up documents to make your shelter official." He smiled. "All I need is your signature." Faizan looked at the paper. So many words, complicated language. Then he saw one small line at the bottom. Full ownership of land transfers to sponsor upon project completion. His chest tightened. This wasn't a gift. It was a trap. Faizan folded the papers slowly. "Thank you," he said. "I'll think about it," Mr. Naeem smiled. "Of course, take your time." But Faizan saw it, the flicker in his eyes, like a mask slipping for just 1 second. That night, Faizan returned to Baba Rehmat. He told him everything. The old man listened quietly, then said, "The enemy never wears horns. He wears a smile and waits for you to sleep." Faizan asked, "What should I do?" Baba Rehmat placed a hand on his shoulder. "Protect the place. But more than that, protect your heart. If you lose your faith, even truth won't save you." The next day, Faizan called a community meeting. He told the truth. About Mr. Naeem, about the fake documents, about the plan to take the land. At first, people were shocked, but then one by one they stood with Faizan. "This place saved my son. My daughter learned to read here. We won't let anyone take it." When Mr. Naeem arrived later, that afternoon the gate was closed. Faizan stood behind it, calm but firm. "I'm sorry," he said. "We won't be needing your help anymore." Mr. Naeem laughed coldly. "You really think you can run this place alone?" Faizan didn't blink. "I'm not alone. The neighbors, the children, the parents, they all stood behind him." Mr. Naeem turned and left, this time without a smile. But Faizan knew it wasn't over. People like him didn't give up so easily. That night, the shelter was quiet. Faizan sat by the window. The sky above him was dark, but his heart was calm. He didn't have money, he didn't have power, but he had truth, and that was enough to keep going. They thought breaking his shelter would break his spirit, but Faizan had something fire couldn't touch: purpose. And sometimes when everything burns, God lets you rise from the ashes. The morning sun had just begun to rise when Faizan walked toward the shelter gate and froze. The lock was broken, the doors wide open. Inside, it looked like a storm had hit. Drawings were ripped from the walls, books were scattered and burned in a corner, desks were thrown upside down, and on the wall, in red spray paint, one sentence: "This is just the beginning." Faizan stood there, silent. The children who came early stood beside him, shocked, scared. One little girl holding her school bag whispered, "Uncle, who did this?" Faizan didn't answer. Because he didn't know for sure, but deep in his heart, he felt it. Mr. Naeem hadn't left quietly. Neighbors gathered. Some cried, others shouted with anger. Faizan walked through the mess slowly. His shoes crushed burnt paper. His eyes scanned every corner. The place that was becoming a home again looked like a battlefield now, but in the middle of the damage, one thing survived untouched: the small blue heart drawing on the wall, the one Zoya had given him. He walked up to it and stared. They burned the books. They broke the walls. But this they couldn't touch. He turned to the children. "I know this looks scary," he said softly, "but we're still standing. And if we're still standing, we're still fighting." One boy raised his hand, voice shaking. "But what if they come again?" Faizan knelt beside him. "Then we'll face them again. Not with fear, not with hate, but with unity, with truth." Later that day, Faizan went to the police station. He showed them the broken lock, the photos, the threat on the wall. The officer nodded, but his voice was cold. "Do you have proof who did this?" Faizan hesitated. "No, not yet." The officer shrugged. "Then we can't do much. File a report if you want." Faizan walked out, feeling defeated. He returned to the shelter that evening, alone, But he didn't sit in the darkness. Instead, he cleaned. Piece by piece, he picked up burnt books, fixed chairs, taped broken drawings, and as he worked, one thought kept him going. You can burn the paper, but you can't burn the message. Suddenly, he heard a voice behind him. Need help? It was the tea stall owner. Behind him, 5 more people. We heard what happened, one woman said. You stood for us. Now we stand for you. One by one, more people came. Some brought new notebooks. Some brought paint. Some brought nothing. Just hands and hearts. Together they worked. Through the night, and by sunrise, the shelter looked alive again. Not perfect, but unbreakable. That morning, Faizan gathered the children. I want you to remember something, he said. They tried to scare us. They tried to stop us. But we are still here. Because this place doesn't stand on bricks. It stands on love. As the kids clapped and smiled again, Faizan looked at the photo of his father on the wall. He whispered, You didn't build a shelter, Abba. You built a spirit, and it still lives. But just when peace began to return, Faizan received a phone. Call unknown number. A deep, quiet voice on the other end. If you want to save your shelter, you need to come alone, tonight. No one else. I'll tell you what your father never could. Then the call ended. No name, no location yet. Only instructions. Be ready. Midnight. Not every door is made of wood. Some are made of fear. And once you open them, life never stays the same. That night, Faizan had to choose. Stay safe, or walk into the dark and find the truth. The shelter was quiet. The children were asleep. Only the street dogs barked in the distance. Faizan sat by the window, the phone still in his hand. Come alone. Midnight. I'll tell you what your father never could. He didn't recognize the voice, but something about it felt familiar. Not safe, but serious. Faizan looked at the photo of his father. For a moment he remembered that day his father hugged him and said, One day, life will ask you to be brave. Not for yourself, but for others. Faizan took a deep breath. It was time. At 11:45 p.m., he stepped out. No one followed. He didn't tell anyone, only a note on his desk. If I don't return by morning, protect the children. The city felt different at night, empty, cold, as if it knew he was going somewhere important. At exactly 12:00, his phone rang again. Same number. Walk to the old railway tunnel. You'll see a door. Behind it is what your father left behind. Then silence. Faizan reached the old railway tunnel. It hadn't been used in years. It was dark, covered in dust and vines. He looked around. Then he saw it. A small wooden door hidden in the wall. It didn't look like much, but something in Faizan's heart whispered, This is the moment. He touched the handle. Cold. Heavy. He turned it slowly and stepped inside. The room was dim. One small lantern hung from the ceiling. A table. A few old chairs. And one man sitting silently, face hidden under a cap. Faizan, the man said. I've been waiting a long time. Faizan stepped forward. Who are you? The man removed his cap slowly. Faizan gasped. He had seen this face in one photo before, beside his father. You knew my father? Faizan whispered. Yes, the man nodded. I was his closest friend until the day he died. Faizan's eyes filled with questions. Then why did you hide? Why now? The man looked down. Because your father died for something bigger than this shelter. He found out something powerful men wanted to hide. And now, they know you're close to it too. Faizan's heart raced. What did he find? The man pulled out a small black diary, old and cracked. This. Your father wrote everything in here. But he never got to finish it. He was betrayed. Faizan took the diary slowly. Inside, his father's handwriting, drawings, plans, names. It was like a map, leading somewhere. Before Faizan could ask more, the man leaned close. They know you came here tonight. They may already be watching. You must leave. Now. Faizan looked at him. What about you? The man smiled sadly. I'll stay hidden. My time is gone, but yours is just beginning. He handed Faizan a key. There's one more place you must visit. The answer to who killed your father and why is there. And once you know the truth, you'll know what to do. Faizan walked out of the tunnel, holding the diary and the key. The wind blew harder now, but he felt stronger. As he reached the shelter gate, something caught his eye. A black car parked outside. Inside, 2 men watching him. They didn't move, just stared. Then, the car drove away slowly. Faizan knew. They know I have the diary. The real game has begun. Sometimes you don't understand why God is silent until you see the full picture. And when you do, you realize every broken piece had a purpose. Faizan sat alone in the small shelter room. In front of him, his father's old diary, the strange key, and a question that had followed him for years. Why me? Why did God put him in this place? Why did life take his father? Why so much pain? Silence, confusion. But now, he was starting to understand. He opened the diary again. Every page had clues about the land, about the corruption, about the people who wanted to steal what his father had built, and on the last page, his father's handwriting. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't finish what I started. But maybe you were meant to. Faizan's hands shook. He read the next line slowly. Son, you once asked me what God's plan was. I didn't know then, but I know now. God doesn't call the strongest. He calls the willing. And if you're still standing, that means he's still working. Tears rolled down Faizan's face. Everything he faced. The fire, the lies, the fear. It wasn't random. It was preparation. He took the key and walked to the back of the shelter. There, behind the water tank, was an old wooden floorboard his father had once told him never to open. Faizan placed the key into the hidden lock. Click. He lifted the floorboard. Inside was a metal box. He opened it. Inside were legal documents, showing his father owned the land fully, copies of proof against the corrupt men trying to steal it, and a USB marked for truth. Faizan gasped. His father didn't just dream of saving people. He prepared for it. He saw the storm coming and left a way through it. With those documents and the USB, Faizan went to a trusted lawyer. Weeks passed. Investigations opened. News channels exposed the corrupt officials. The people who tried to steal the shelter were arrested. The shelter, now protected by law, was declared a community property, free for all children, forever. The day that happened, Faizan walked into the shelter as the children ran around happily. Zoya ran to him and hugged his leg. Uncle Faizan, she smiled. Are we safe now? He bent down and smiled back. Yes, Beta. You're more than safe. You're seen. You're chosen. And no one can take that away now. Later that evening, the whole community gathered for the reopening ceremony. Baba Rehmat sat in front. Faizan stood on the small stage. He looked at the people, some smiling, some crying, and said, This shelter was built by my father, me, but it was saved by all of us. When things looked unclear, I almost gave up. But now I see, that's when God was telling me, move, don't stop, don't fear, just move. The crowd clapped, but Faizan knew This story wasn't just his. It belonged to every person who ever felt small, lost, unseen. He raised his hand and said, "If God put something heavy in your life, maybe it's because he trusts you to carry it. Maybe you're not broken. Maybe you're called."